Yo, what is going on, you guys? We are back with another video. We are here. It is another week of Colts football. The Colts versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's going to be a very exciting, fun game. Fun game for some of you, a stressful game for others. But I am your host, Culture Shock. I am not here alone. I got my guy Landon with me. Landon, how we doing?
Doing great, man. Just, it's Thursday night football tonight. So unfortunately, it's the Giants and the Cowboys. So it's, classic Thursday night football. But at least we get it out of the way. But yeah, I mean, I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome, awesome to hear, man. We got us a good one coming up, man. The Indianapolis Colts versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's going to be a good game, man. Honestly, in my opinion, it's going to be defense versus defense. I think both offenses is still trying to figure it out, even though Justin Fields has been playing good football, so we will give him his credit. Honestly, but it's going to be a good game, man. I do think it's going to be excited to see how Coach Tomlin brings this defense up against Shane Steichen and how Shane Steichen's going to figure out this offense because this offense got to figure it out soon. Honestly, in my opinion. But let's go ahead and pretty much just try to go ahead and talk about this offense as well. So this offense, I think, has been pass heavy as of late. Of course, we figured out Jonathan Taylor at the end of the stretch last week with the Chicago Bears putting on two tutties and pretty much 100 yards on the ground, which was a good game. But honestly, I feel like I think he can run a little bit more into the offense, just to try to get Anthony Richardson a little bit more polished, I would say, because his footwork, of course, we know his presence in the pocket isn't as polished as we want it to be, but he still has to develop as well as a quarterback because he's still young and he's not as experienced as everyone else. But what is your thoughts on should the offense dial the run more or pass more this week against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, which is number one in the NFL?
Yeah, well, honestly, I don't think they're really going to have much of a choice in this game. I think Pittsburgh is going to play the Colts very similar to how Chicago played the Colts. The only difference is I think Pittsburgh obviously has a little bit more talent along their defense. Now, I don't know if Alex Highsmith is going to play. That's going to be a big key, I think, for Pittsburgh with him on that D line. But this is a tough D, man. And what they're going to do, and I'm telling you right now, what they're going to do, they're going to load the box up. They're going to try to contain the edge. They're going to keep a spy in on Anthony Richardson so he can't beat you with his legs. And they're going to play zone coverage. They're going to play straight zone. They're going to say, hey, Anthony Richardson, beat us from the pocket. Because right now he's shown that he can't do that. And if he does come out and do that, you live with it and you're disappointed it happens, but you live with it. But I just I think Jonathan Taylor is one of those special backs that no matter what happens, he can take it to the house no matter what. So he's going to get his, but you kind of want to limit the impact he can have. Now it's up to Shane and the coaching staff. And really, I thought they've done a pretty good outside of the Green Bay game. I think the coaching staff has done a really good job of dialing up, you know, open receivers, making things easy. It's just up to Richardson to hit it. That's the only thing that's really missing is just hitting the easy stuff that the defense is going to give you. So if the quarterback play is up to par, I think they'll see some success. If it's not, then you're probably going to see them struggle again this week.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing to add it to the offense, of course, we talked about the players. We talked about Richardson just pretty much hitting the open targets. It's a little important to see in my opinion. Of course, the receivers are open. They got to catch the football too, no matter how hard Richardson throws the things that I like. Even if he can lighten up the passes just to make it easier for the targets because they are open. I would love to see the tight end room be a little bit more productive this week just because of how good this defense might be for Pittsburgh. I think, if we can get some type of production from Granton or even Moali Cox, so just somebody to be a little bit more productive just to help Richardson and the wide receiver room, I think that could be a huge boost for this offense and even Richardson moving forward after
I
this
think
week.
they I think they need to give Will Mallory a shot. I know he's been like a healthy and active the first 3 weeks. I don't really understand the point of keeping this many tight ends if you're going to have them inactive, And Obviously, we're not there in practice. We don't know every single thing that goes on, but just from a fan perspective, Kylan Granson is not getting it done. He's not been good enough. He's actually been kind of the cause of a few mistakes that we've seen from Anthony Richardson, whether it's, slipping or whether it's, the preseason cutting in, like that's caused a couple interceptions. You have some other guys, and I think Will Mallory is a really talented guy that he has shown that when he's on the field, like he's had some flashes where he makes an impact. So I think they should give him a shot, but we'll
I
see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, he might be the best tight end in the room as of right now. When you look at it, how productive he can be, especially from his past reps when he was on the field, like he can take it to the house. Like anytime he get the
Well,
ball,
I think
that's just behind the scenes.
Like I know everybody has like this vendetta really against Mo Alley Cox and stuff, but to me, he's very clearly been the best tight end in that room to start this year. And really that has to do more with the run blocking, like his ability as a blocker is why he has been so successful because nobody's really been successful when it comes to the passing game except for Alec Pierce. Um, but I I mean, I think everybody should give him his flowers. Like he's very clearly putting in the work, and I think he's even had a few catches to where, like whenever he gets the ball in his hands, he's just such a big mobile guy that I mean, he's tough to bring down. So maybe they utilize Mo Alley Cox a little bit more this week.
I would be excited, regardless of who it is. I was ecstatic when Ransom caught that pass, and I thought he was going to house call it last week against Chicago, even though he went out of bounds. But like I said, just the tight end room, anybody in general, of course, Mallory or Mo Cox or Granson, anybody that can pretty much get you production out of that room will help the offense moving forward. So it'll be exciting to see. You mentioned Highsmith. I do have the injury report. Highsmith didn't practice. Michael Pruitt, he didn't practice. Jalen Warren, Miles Kilbrew, Cameron Hayward, and Cordell Patterson for the Pittsburgh Steelers did not practice today. So it's going to be interesting to see what that Friday report looks like. Who was limited in practice was Russell Wilson and Isaac Samulo. So that should be interesting to move forward. But the Colts practice report, I don't know if you've seen it yet or not. It's something that would have you worried, especially when we're about to go to the next topic talking about this defense, right? So Chris Lemons, which is a nickel corner, didn't practice. Kenny Moore, nickel corner, didn't practice. Quiddy Pay didn't practice. Braden Smith actually practiced, which is a relief because we will need his presence this game. Tyquan Lewis, he didn't practice, but he practiced on Wednesday, so I'm pretty sure he's going to be a go. Grant Stewart practiced, and then Ryan Kelly, he missed his first practice today with his neck injury. So, what's your thoughts about that injury report, especially like at the nickel corner position, man? Those guys we're definitely going to be needed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really pay much attention to injury reports until Friday. That's when you kind of get a better idea. Like during the week, it's just kind of really a waste of time to read too much into it. Um, so I would say, like, I'll wait till tomorrow, honestly, before I really have any thoughts on any of it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Like we can go back to before we hop into Colts defense, just Anthony Richardson importance in this game against this number one defense, right? So this might, like I mentioned prior, this is the best defense he's going to play all year so far. This defense is no joke. So he's going to have to bring it this game. Of course, like I said, the last few games it wasn't really granted from his production. A lot of people are on edge. Of course, we've seen people talking about start Joe Flacco things of that nature, but no matter how inconsistent he may be, he still keeps you in the game. I think a lot of people seem to forget that. He still can make those plays and things of that nature. We talked about maybe like option plays and things of that nature as well. But other than that, like how could you predict how this game could go for Anthony Richardson against this defense?
Well, really, like the main focus right now, um, even more so than like hitting the layups and all that, it's got to be turnovers, right? Like he's turned the ball over as much as any quarterback in football to start the season. And that's including, we hear like the Will Levis jokes and all that. Richardson's turned the ball over just as much. And like that's alarming. It's extremely alarming. Um, Last week, you were able to get away with it, right? You came out with a win. Chicago could not capitalize. Chicago still has some issues they're working through. With a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers and the way they're coached every single year with Mike Tomlin, they you cannot make mistakes against that team. That's a team that does not beat themselves. The reason why they are able to stay in the playoff hunt every single year and make the playoffs is because they do not beat themselves and they capitalize on other teams' mistakes. If you turn the ball over against Pittsburgh, if you have multiple turnovers against Pittsburgh, you 90% of the time, like you are going to lose the game. So that has to be the main focus right now is you cannot have turnovers in this game.
I agree 100%. And also, like another thing about Pittsburgh and how well coached they are. Shout out to Mike Tomlin, man. He's been doing it for so long. Definitely deserves his flowers. But this Pittsburgh defense, of course, they can turn the ball over, but most of their turnovers can be pretty much house calls. Like they can pretty much get in that end zone pretty quickly as well. So like TJ Watt, I'm pretty sure he's looking for a strip fumble. That safety room's looking for a pick, and even the linebacker room improved over the off season. So it's gonna be like you gotta be very polished this game, and you gotta hit those passes when you get that chance because if you slip up, it might end up in six going the other way. So it's going to be interesting to see how Richardson and his offense and Shane Stein can get these boys prepared for this game. So it's going to be really interesting. Um, the Colts defense, we just mentioned the injury report. They're going up against a very mobile quarterback and a guy that can pretty much get the ball in the air. Of course, former Chicago Bear Justin Fields is in Pittsburgh now. He's in a new place. He's got a team, a system that's pretty much fitting into what he can do. And it's honestly, in my opinion, it's a good thing to see, especially Justin Fields, like all he's been through in Chicago. Like him having a coach that's pretty much got his back and pretty much a good coach as well, like that can motivate him to pretty much lock in. I think it's a good thing for him and the team in general. Like it's a good thing to see Justin Fields having a good success rate, especially having him 3-0 moving forward. But this Colts defense is going to have to figure it out. It's another week, of Colts football trying to stay clean. Of course, they can get beat in the air. They can probably get beat on the run game as well, especially with Justin Fields at their quarterback. Um, the Colts had a good game last week, right? But they played the Bears. They played the Steelers this week. Do you think they have a chance of stepping up and having another successful week against this team?
Well, I mean, like it just goes back really to, I mean, did they really have a good game last week? I mean, they still allowed almost 400 yards through the air. Like, that's not really a good week to me. I think the Bears, like I said, the Bears did a really good job of beating themselves to where they, turn multiple turnovers, all this kind of like, I mean, there's a lot that went on in that game. Where as Pittsburgh, they have one turnover on the year on offense. Like I said, this is a team that does not beat themselves. They don't put themselves in positions to lose ball games. Cole Kmet last week, huge game over the middle, right? From the tight end position. Now you're going to get probably, in my opinion, a little bit even more talented of a tight end, Pat Fryermuth, right? Just signed a big extension there in Pittsburgh.
Moo!
Yeah, so I mean, like George Pickens, another guy. He's not a guy that gets a ton of separation, but he's a guy that is very good at the catch point. And what's one area that we've seen guys like Jalen Jones give up these big plays? It's not really been getting burnt, ton of separation deep. It's really been on jump balls where he's just getting overpowered and stuff like that. So that's that's a tough matchup. It is. And then you even have a guy that had a really good week. Guy that I liked coming out of Memphis, a couple years back, and that's Calvin Austin III. And he has the ability to, once he gets open in the middle of the field or they get the ball in his hands, he can make guys miss. He's a really explosive guy. So you have to tackle, like you cannot tackle the way you tackled last week. And really the way they've tackled really to start this year. You can't have missed tackles in this game. Like I said, this is a team, they're very well coached. They don't put themselves in positions to beat themselves. The Colts, on the other hand, are literally almost the exact opposite. They don't get a ton of takeaways, and they give the ball up at a very high rate right now on offense. They're they're beating themselves. So I think this is going to be the key game where you look back on it and you say like, "Hey, were we able to clean up the turnovers? Were we able to maybe get one or two turnovers off of Justin Fields?" And that could really be the deciding factor of the game. I think, like I said, you're looking really towards the middle. Like the linebackers are going to have to cover better than they have been. Now they picked it up in run defense last week. They did a really good job in run defense, but you're going to have to cover better this week with Pat Fryermuth. Jalen Jones is going to have to show that last week the playmaking ability wasn't just a one-off. Like this is where you need to stack good weeks, right? If you want to prove that whatever stuff people have been saying about you all off season, if you want to make people eat their words, this is where you need to stack good weeks. You can't just have one good week and then the rest of the time you just fall apart. So it's going to be really important for him to stay disciplined. He has the tendency to get a little grabby in coverage, right? And when you have a guy like George Pickens, that can really be a recipe for disaster. So you got to watch the penalties, you got to watch the turnovers, you got to watch your tackling. Basically, basic football, right? You need to get back to basic football.
Yeah, man. That's I've mentioned the praise of Jalen Jones and how scrappy he can be, but of course, that could lead to penalties too, man. Penalties can they can take you out of the game so fast. So it's going to be interesting to see
The
how
Colts
they
have been
pretty much.
generally they've been generally good about not committing a lot of penalties, right? I mean, I know they had a few last week, but for the most part, through the first 3 weeks, like they don't really commit a lot of penalties. So that's not really a huge concern of mine. But like I said, I know like some of the tendencies with Jalen Jones, he does tend to get a little grabby in coverage, and so when it's a little bit different whenever you're going against like a fast guy or a small guy or like a rookie or somebody like that. But like George Pickens, he's a guy that he's he doesn't create a ton of separation, so you're gonna have a lot of opportunities there. And if you start getting grabby with him, like you could probably see a little bit more flags, a little bit more PIs this week if you don't clean up that technique a little bit.
Yeah. It's going to it's going to be a good game, man. That's pretty much what I can say. But you did mention the linebackers going to have to probably play a little bit more coverage today. We seen EJ Speed last week going up against Dunze. I'm pretty sure Mike Tomlin got these guys ready in that film room and pretty much knowing how to dissect this defense going forward. Gus Bradley is going to have his plate full this week against this offense with Justice Field at that quarterback position. But like I said, I think the Colts have a really good shot of winning this game. Like I said, um, beating this team, the number one defense in the NFL right now, does a lot for not just the locker room but the team in general. So this could be a huge turnaround for the Colts. And to be honest, like this division is wide open. I thought it would have been clearer than what we were. Of course, we had the Texans being the clear winner right now, but all of these teams are not playing the best football as of right now. So the Colts do have an opportunity to pretty much turn this season around if they can go on a nice little win streak at this moment before it start getting cold outside. So, um, how important do you think this game could be for the Colts if they could just happen to beat this number one defense?
I mean, like if you were able to come away with a win against this, I mean, it's an undefeated team. I mean, we're only 3 weeks into the season, so this isn't like a make or break, week. But the
Right.
Texans, I believe, I mean, they got a relatively easy matchup this week. I know they're dealing with a lot of injuries over there right now. Tank Dell, I don't think's playing. Nico Collins popped up on the injury report today. You know, they're both their running backs.
Yeah, Mixon. I
They're
mean, yeah,
yeah, like they're banged up. So we'll see. But on paper, they have a relatively easy matchup, right? So if they can get a win and then the Colts lose, and then say, you know, the Titans end up winning or something. I mean, just you never know. It's still so early that like a loss isn't going to kill you, but I mean, it's a lot easier to stomach everything whenever you're 2-2, you know, quarter way of the season, as opposed to sitting there at 1-3, and then you're really having to kind of look. The good news is for the Colts, I think after this game, they have some really favorable defenses coming up for the offense to get on track for the next, 3 or 4 weeks. Um, so that's kind of what the bright spot is. So if you are able to pull even, you have some really favorable games that you can kind of put yourself in a really good position moving forward. Whereas if you fall to 1-3, you got to dig out of a hole, and that's not a place you want to live in. And we've seen this team multiple times have to dig itself out of early season holes to have a shot at the playoffs. And most of the time, it usually ends up being the Achilles heel of why they don't make the playoffs is because you're starting 1-5, you're starting 1-4, and then that last week you just need to, you need one win to get into the playoffs, and it doesn't happen. So if you can avoid getting into those early holes, that's preferable. But this is a tough game. This is going to be tough. I know we haven't even really talked much about Justin Fields. Like I haven't even talked really about Justin Fields, and I me personally, like I'm a massive Justin Fields fan. I know it didn't work out in Chicago and all that, but I actually had him ranked as my quarterback one in that class over Trevor Lawrence. That's how big of a fan I was of Justin Fields. And so it's been really cool for me to see him go to a better situation and performed. I mean, he's not really making these dumb decisions that he was kind of known for in Chicago. Like he seems like imagine that a guy going into his fourth year has improved. And you're going into year four. It's almost like improvement happens. Wink, wink. If you just give it time. Pretty crazy, right? So it's been
Conceded, I think not.
yeah. So it's been really cool for to see a guy that I was so high on that I root for, play good ball. And we didn't even talk about really the most dangerous aspect of his games because he's been really killing people from the pocket. Like he hasn't been like the Justin Fields where he's completing 60% of his passes and he might throw 130 yards, but he's running for 150. It's really been the exact opposite to where he's staying in the pocket. He's making good decisions. He's making good reads. He's getting the ball to his playmakers on time and on target. And that's something we haven't seen from him. So I've been really impressed with him. I'm really excited to see the way they're going. Arthur Smith, for all the shit that I've given him over the years, and trust me, it's been plenty as much as I like Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Bijan Robinson and all these beautiful offensive weapons they drafted in Atlanta, for him to just hand the ball off to Tyler Algier 30 times a game, it was so fucking frustrating. I'm sorry. You edit that out. It's been so freaking frustrating. My apologies on the language. Um, but it's he's done a heck of a job, man. So like hats off to Arthur Smith, hats off to Justin Fields. The most dangerous part would be really his legs, right? Because that's the most dangerous part of his game is he's a guy that if everything's covered up, he can make it happen. He can make plays. So the good news is the Colts practice against a guy like that a lot of the times. So you should relatively be well prepared for that, but you're gonna have to set the edge, right? You can't let Justin Fields escape. You're gonna have to keep him in the pocket, make him a pocket passer, and very similar to what I think the Steelers will do with Anthony Richardson, right? Is if Justin Fields beats the Colts defense from the pocket by throwing all over the field, you just tip your hat and you say, "Hey, great job." But that's the world you want to live in. You don't want to live in the world where he's running 150, 160 yards in a game and he's making all these plays outside of the pocket.
I agree 100%. And with this Colts defense, we know the zone coverages that they usually run. It's granted that Fields could have a good field day, a good passing day. So hopefully that's not the case. But uh, another thing we got to mention is the Colts when they get down to the red zone, right? We heard Shane Steichen last week talking about how much is his fault when it comes to the play calling, the decision making, in certain drives. But the Colts was like 50-50 in the red zone, honestly. Of course, the defense they stood tall, but the offensive store, I think they're still trying to figure it out, honestly. But how important is it for for Shane Steichen and his decision making, maybe like on third and long or fourth down, going forward, or even getting to the red zone. Um, like he has to clean it up. Like, what was your thoughts on the whole red zone situation with the Colts?
Well, first off, they've actually got to get to the red zone, right? And that's been like a pretty big struggle. Is it's hard to get red zone reps and red zone play calls when you're not getting into the red zone. A lot of it's been basically explosive plays or bust. So you have to sustain drives. You cannot keep, as much crap as we want to give this defense, you cannot keep them on the field for 40 minutes like you have been. You just can't. Um, and you have to sustain drives. Now, hopefully, sustain drives obviously leads to red zone opportunities. I think this has been the biggest missing piece to me in the red zone is the use of Anthony Richardson as a runner. Um, there's so much more things that you can do with a guy like that. And I don't know, like I said, if they're just trying to fast track his development as a passer, which I think is actually the correct thing to do. I agree with the approach. No, a lot of people sit there and oh, I don't want to see Anthony Richardson throwing 35 to 45 passes a game. I was like, I mean, yeah, you probably don't want to see it right now, but I think later on in his career, a year or two from now, if he's throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game, like that's you're fast tracking his development as a passer. And if he can continue that development, the more he throws, the better he's going to get at it. And that's going to help us in the long term. Now, if you're concerned with winning football games right now, which I do think they probably should be, especially Chris Ballard, like you've got to eventually you got to show results, right? So I think you need to lean heavily on Jonathan Taylor, like they did last week. That's the key to winning. If you want to fast track Richardson's development, you let him sling the ball. If you want to win football games, you give the ball to Jonathan Taylor. But whenever you do that, it kind of stunts his growth as a passer. Because like last week, he threw the ball 20 times. 20 times. That's it. And granted, he was horrible, right? I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. He was horrible last week. Um, but 20 times, that ain't gonna get it done. Uh, and they won the game. So during the red zone, if they can sustain these drives, get to the red zone, I think that's really where Anthony Richardson can be the most dangerous, especially utilizing his legs. No more speed options. Let's throw that in the garbage. We don't want speed option. Um, but at that point, it's up to Richardson to make decisions, right? They got into the red zone last week, and what did he do? He threw it into quadruple coverage. I mean, just lofted it right to the defender. That can't happen against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You can get away with that stuff with the Bears. You can get away with it because they're going to beat themselves as well. They're going to give it right back to you. Pittsburgh won't do that. So you got to be better.
I agree, man. They got to be better. But I got faith in this team, man. I got faith in Shane as well. I think he's gonna get these guys right. I think Richardson can have himself a big day, but it's not gonna be easy at all with that defensive line, man. It's even with them missing Highsmith and things of that nature. Like T.J. Watt himself is still a freak in nature. We all know that. Like he's always in defensive
Yeah,
play of the
you're.
game.
That's a guy that he's a ambient guy, right? He keeps you up at night whenever you're thinking about him. You got to have a running back. You got to have a tight end chipping him. You got, I mean, you have to know where number 90 is at all times. Like, and you have to bring help to his side. And if the other guy beats you, like I said, you tip your hat. You say, okay, we'll live with it. You can't let TJ Watt wreck a game. You just can't. And luckily, Braden Smith has had whenever because they played 3 times in Braden Smith's career. I saw this stat earlier. I can't remember which account posted it, but whenever Braden Smith was out the first game, TJ Watt had 2 sacks. When Braden Smith played the next game, TJ Watt had 0 sacks. And then when Braden Smith missed last year's game, TJ Watt had 2 sacks. So Braden Smith has been, him being available is really key to this game because he has shown some success against TJ Watt as much as you can. Now, past success means nothing with a guy. He's a guy that no matter what happens, like no matter who you got over there, it doesn't matter if it's, Lane Johnson or whoever else. He will tear you apart. He can single-handedly change a game. He is that good of a football player. So you've got to have a plan for him, and you've got to get the ball out quick. You've got to make good decisions, and yeah, that's don't let 90 wreck the game. That should be on everybody. That should be on like the big bulletin board, right? Whenever you walk into the locker room, and you got a big sign in there, that should be on the sign. Is like, where is 90? That should be on the top of Anthony Richardson's play sheet this entire week on every sheet of paper. It should be where's 90? Where's 90? Where's 90? On everything he looks at. Whenever he goes home and wipes his ass, he needs to take the toilet paper. The toilet paper needs to say, where's 90 when he looks at it. Everything he does needs to be, where's 90?
I agree, man. He got to identify him every snap when he get up there in that pocket, man. He got to look at it. He got to find him. If not, he gonna find him. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's gonna be
Yeah. Yeah. You got to know where he is because I can guarantee you he knows where you are. And he's coming. Every day he's coming. Every game.
yeah, man, he is. But on the opposite side, on the Colts side, they got T.J. Watt Jr. Of course, they got the comparison going out. They got the
No,
comparison out. They said
no,
he
no,
got
no.
flashes of Latu.
There's no
No
comparison.
flashes of TJ.
Let's stop that right now.
So
Let's
it's
stop
it's
it.
gonna
He's
be
played
interesting.
3 games.
You seen the picture with Latu and TJ with the preview? You
There's
seen it?
yeah, that's a
Hey,
stupid
hey,
picture.
man, I don't make the rules. I don't make the
Stupid.
rules. But Latu he had a good game last week. He is forcing a lot of pressure, so we're gonna need him big time against Justin Fields because Justin Fields can move around in that pocket and he can run, he can throw as well. So uh it's gonna be extremely important for this defensive line to lock in. Um is DeForest Buckner playing this week?
No, he's on IR. He's out for 4 weeks. So
Yeah, so
he's missing this game and at least the next 2, if not more than that. So at best, you're looking at week 8 at best. Um,
yeah,
and so yeah, that's still going to be. But I will say, Raekwon Davis and Grover Stewart, they did great. This is another. You got to
Taven
get
Bryan.
Dio. Yeah, you got to get Dio on the field. You've got to get Dio Dangbo on the field more. He's been fantastic whenever he's been out there. He's caused a lot of havoc out there. I think him and Latu are like the 2 key guys on that defensive line right now. Especially if Kwity Paye, does end up missing this game. Like you got to run Dio and you got to run Latu.
Absolutely, man. You forgot Taven Bryan. You didn't mention Taven Bryan.
Hey, and shout out to Taven Bryan too. I know we did this like last week. Shout out to Taven Bryan. And look, I told you the other day whenever we were on the film. Yes, I've been a very big Taven Bryan. I'm not even going to say hater, just like critic.
I don't think so.
Yeah, like it's nothing about it's personal. It's just a critic. Like, I mean, whenever he's out there, he's got to play better. But I've defended him the last couple weeks because this coaching staff has not put him in a position to do what he does best. And it's so funny that I made that argument last week. And then the next day he came out with that quote where he was talking about the same thing. And I'm like, I said this on the show yesterday, and now you even got the player echoing it. Like, come on, man. Like, what are we doing here? Like, you're asking Taven Bryan to take on a double team with 300 pounds. Like, that's 600 pounds of muscle on Taven Bryan, and he is just not built like Grover is built like that. Raekwon Davis is built like that. Taven Bryan is not built like that. Taven Bryan is a guy that you can put in on third downs, and he can give you a few productive pass rushing snaps and help you get after the quarterback on 3rd and longs. He did that last week. They put him in they used him correctly. And to his credit, imagine that, he actually didn't look so terrible out there. So yeah, shout out to Taven Bryan. He did his thing last week. If they can continue to get Chicago and Justin Fields, or not Chicago, but Pittsburgh and Justin Fields into these 3rd and long situations where you can kind of utilize, that like NASCAR package, 5 wide, all that kind of stuff that they call it out there, where you're able to line up, Latu and use all these cool stunts, with Addy or Taekwon or Dio and all this stuff. Like, you can really get after some guys. They have the horses to do it even without Buckner. But the key to being able to do that is you have to earn the right to rush the passer, and that's by stopping the run and making sure you tackle on the first two downs. You have like this whole thing. That's what killed them. What kept them on the field the first couple of weeks, and why they played so much football, and why they looked so bad, is because if it's first down and you're allowing an 8-yard run and it's 2nd and 2, you're not going to have many opportunities to rush the passer. You're just not. So um, I think that's definitely a key, and not even just for this week. That's just a key moving forward. That's basic football. Every single week, I could say that exact same thing.
Hey, man. Saving Brian commitment to going to make that stop last week, chipping his tooth and everything, just shows you how much he's hungry. And he gets his flowers, man. He definitely does. So before we get up out of here, we got to talk Josh Downs and AD Mitchell, right? We talked about Richardson, but the wide receiver room, of course, could be better. But AD Mitchell and Josh Downs, of course, this is Josh Downs' second game back, but their importance in this game is going to be super important, not just for Richardson, for the offense. Like, we're going to need them to go out there and have themselves a good game. What's your thoughts on the importance of those guys this week?
Well, really, I mean, the wide receiver room to me honestly hasn't been that bad. It's actually been more quarterback play. And I know a lot of people have been harping on the drops, and rightfully so. Look, this is the NFL. The ball hits your hands, catch the freaking football, right? You're getting paid millions of dollars. Yeah. But I will say, Richardson, like, there's a lot of times, like, you got to take some heat off of it, man. You got to give him a catchable ball. Like, you can't just if he's 8 yards away, there's no reason to rocket that thing in at 102 miles an hour. Like, it just makes it really hard for these receivers to catch the football. So I think, end of the day, you got to catch it. Quarterback can do a better job of getting them the ball, giving them a better ball, like you said. Um, AD Mitchell, uh, you've really seen the growing pains the first 3 weeks, and this was always going to be the case, right? Um, to where everybody points at the separation, right? And they'll look at a route and they'll say, "Man, AD Mitchell's wide open over there. Like, why isn't Richardson, looking at him or throwing him the ball?" Well, so when you go back and look at it, a lot of the times it kind of looks a little bit. And I'm not saying this is true because obviously I'm not in the room. I don't know what these guys are being coached to do. I don't know. But a lot of times it looks like AD Mitchell is kind of improvising a little bit out there. And so, yes, he looks like he's open, but it's not really in the progression of things. So that's why Richardson, it's not, the right timing of the routes. And he just seems like he's just got a little bit more, he just seasoning, right? You just got to season him up a little bit more. Make sure, if you're hitting your back foot on a 5-step drop and your receivers, supposed to be at the 18-yard line, halfway, to the hash mark, and you hit that you hit that 5th step and the ball's ready to go. And he's out there kind of doing his little thing, and you got to move on to the next player. It's not ready. It's not ready. And then you look, and then they show it and they're like, well, AD Mitchell was wide open right over here. It's like, well, he's just not where he's supposed to be. Right. So that just comes with the territory with young wide receivers. We saw it with Pittman. We saw it with Alec Pierce. We saw it a few times with Josh Downs. Josh Downs was kind of an anomaly, though, because he just came in like almost like a veteran, to where he was just so good at everything. And that's really kind of why I thought you saw AD Mitchell kind of take a step back last week as far as his snap count goes, because I think he's just not quite ready yet. He just needs and I mean, who you taking off the field for him? Right? You can't take Alec Pierce off the field right now. You can't. He's been your second best player on offense.
I agree.
Outside of Jonathan Taylor, and not talking about the offensive line. He's been your second best skill position player on offense. Even better than Michael Pittman, better than Josh Downs, better than AD Mitchell. It's Jonathan Taylor and it's Alec Pierce. You're not taking Pierce off the field right now. You're not taking Josh Downs off the field because of what he can give you. And like I said, he is more like a veteran guy. Like he's going to be in the correct spot. He's going to make the correct, stuff. Very rarely do you see Josh Downs drop a football. And you saw it last week, but I put that more on the quarterback than I do Josh Downs because there's no reason to throw the ball that hard when it's that close of a distance. Like you got to give them a catchable ball. Um, really, the guy that hasn't really shown up too much has been Michael Pittman, and we found out last week he was kind of dealing with some injury issues, right? With a calf injury, a back injury. Anytime you say anything about a calf in the state of Indianapolis, everybody like it's just like Vietnam flashbacks. Um, everybody just that meme where that guys like like all the flashes going on. Like it's you mentioned a calf injury. You think of Darius Leonard, Andrew Luck, all these great players that for some reason their calves just implode on themselves. So he's seems like he's a little banged up right now, but even with that, he's still a guy you can't take Michael Pittman off the field. He just means so much to this offense. He's a team captain. He plays with so much passion. You know how I feel about Michael Pittman Jr.
Tough
He's
as
played.
nails too, man. Like that
Yeah,
last week, the ball he called last week, he was taking everybody to that first down line.
he's been my favorite player on this team. The moment he was drafted. Yeah, I love Pitt so much. That's why it kind of pained me to see some of the effort issues kind of pop up a little bit, at the beginning of the season. Because I'm like, man, that's just not Pitt. That's just he's not really like that. Like, yeah, he can get a little lackadaisical sometimes, but it's never like been an effort issue. Um, and so then last week, whenever you kind of heard he was a little banged up, you're like, okay, that makes sense. That's why he's looking a little sluggish out there. Why it doesn't seem like he's able to go full speed and just give it, 110% like he does literally almost every play. But even then, you're not benching that guy. So who's the odd man out in that situation, right? AD Mitchell. And let's give our flowers to Ashton Doolin as well, he's been a heck of a player the first
He's
3 weeks.
balling. He's
I
balling.
would argue that he's actually been their second best wide receiver on the team the first 3 weeks of the season. So again, naturally that snap count's going to go down, and AD Mitchell's day is going to come. He's too talented, and we've seen the glimpses of talent, right? Like they're there. He's going to be a good player, but you just got to give it a little bit more time. So um, to me, the most important player, it's going to be really not even Alec Pierce. Now, Alec Pierce, at any moment in time, right, he can take you deep. He's been that good this year. You've seen, everybody talks about that third year jump from the wide receiver position, right? The first 2 years, some guys like Puka Nacua, they hit the ground running, but for the most part, there's a lot of times where that third year is where you really see that jump at wide receiver. This is the year for Alec Pierce. You're seeing the jump happen in real time. You're seeing it on Sundays. It's not just Alec Pierce dominated in training camp. Alec Pierce dominated in practice this week. And then you get to Sundays and it's one catch for 14 yards and that's all you're getting. It's showing up on Sundays in a big way. That being said, like I said, they're going to play zone. They're going to keep Anthony Richardson in the pocket. And how do you beat those? TJ Watt's coming. You got to get the ball out fast. You got to get the ball out accurately. And you got to get it to your playmakers in the short area. That's Josh Downs. That's Michael Pittman. That's the tight end position, regardless if it's Granson, Mo Alley Cox, Ogletree, whoever. You got to utilize those guys, and you have to sustain long drives. So I think, to me, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, tight end position, it's going to be a really important part of this game, especially if you're attacking that zone coverage.
I agree. Another thing that I just thought about is we mentioned the pace of the offense. We mentioned how successful Anthony Richardson could be when the pace of the offense is a little bit faster than normal. When the pace is slow, you can see him start to struggle a little bit. But if the tempo is a little bit, do you think they should up the tempo a little bit for the offense against the Steelers defense?
I don't. I don't. That just goes back to the learning curve, right? The more people's got to understand, the more training wheel stuff you put on Anthony Richardson, the more that he's not exposed to this early on in his career, the longer it's going to take for his development to take place. I actually agree with the way they're approaching it, and a lot of people don't. You got to make the quarterback's life easier. You got to get him into these easy things. Like I agree, and I think the coaching staff, relatively outside of like that Green Bay game, I think they've done a very good job of getting him into easy situations. At that point, it is on him to make the you know to make the throw. It's really hasn't been the reads. He's been making the correct reads, right? He's getting his eyes to the right place. It's been a little tick slower, but that's to be expected with a guy that started 20 games since high school, right? But he's getting there, right? He knows where to go with the football. And that's a key thing. Now it's just making the throws. And the only way you do that is to get more reps. Running the hurry up, running the read option, running all this little gimmicky stuff, yeah, sure, it might help him look a little bit better right now, and him, and that's great for people that want to spin a narrative, of I told you guys Anthony Richardson was ready, like he's ready to take us to the playoffs, or you know, and on the flip side, what they're doing now is really kind of not playing to his strengths, and it's making the haters a lot louder, right? You're hearing a lot of, oh, I told you he's not ready, he can't throw the ball, all this stuff like that. It's not about that. It's not about right or wrong right now, right? It's about development. People will know who has been right or wrong in 3 years. Not now. Nobody's gonna. You don't know anything right now. Whenever you hear like the Kurt Benkirk tweet, I guess rent was due this week because he needed some engagement. But you see tweets like that where it's like Justin Fields is what Colts fans want Anthony Richardson to be. Justin Fields has played triple the amount of games Anthony Richardson has. Like Justin Fields, this will be like his. I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it's something like 65. This will be like his 65th game since college.
And he played
Anthony,
through the struggle. That's another thing.
yeah, exactly. What do you think Justin Fields looks like going into his 7th game? Because I do. I remember what it looks like. Because it was in college. It was in college. It wasn't even in the NFL. But you want to get to the NFL, Justin Fields was getting killed in Chicago for his play. So um I like the approach. Take the training wheels off. Like let's not hold it like this is the NFL, right? Let's not hold your hand. Let's give you the tools to succeed and give you the throws. Now it's up to you to make them. And the more Anthony Richardson is exposed to that, the better it's going to be for Anthony Richardson and the Colts franchise in the long run. Because if you play this type of football over and over and over and over and you're getting those valuable reps, you're going to start to get used to it. And that's terrifying to think about. Is once Anthony Richardson gets used to playing from the pocket and gets used to making the easy throws, that's a guy that at that point, yeah, he can take you over the top. Yeah, he can run the football. But yeah, he can stay in the pocket and he can carve you up too. That's what makes Lamar Jackson so dangerous. And that's really what is making Justin Fields so dangerous this year is he's winning from the pocket. He knows where to go with the football. He's getting it out accurately. It's been a big part of the reason, and he's not turning the ball over. And it's been a big part of the reason why the Steelers are 3-0. And so, yeah, you give Anthony Richardson time and you expose him to actual NFL football and actually being a legit quarterback and not running this gimmicky college hurry up RPO, you know, read option gimmick offense. Like he's running a legit, like this is a legit NFL offense. Like this isn't a the Colts don't run a college offense. You hear about like Jaden Daniels with Cliff Kingsbury, how they were talking last week about him running a college offense, which he absolutely he ran it very well. Um,
Loved it.
yeah, it's fantastic to watch that. But the Colts don't run that type of stuff. This isn't like this is a real NFL pro style offense with real NFL progressions and reads and real NFL checks. And that's what they're exposing Richardson to now. So I think if you dial that back just for the sake of him looking better in the short term, you're only hurting yourself in the long term. So I love the way they're approaching it. Keep doing it. Shoot, I would crank it up even further. Like I said, I'm not he ain't throwing 20 passes this week. He's throwing 40 passes this week. We're going all in. We're going all in. And if it costs us a year of development, like I've echoed it 1,000 times, I don't care. Like I don't care. Would it be nice to win and get to the playoffs? Yes. But this season was never that to me. It never was. It was never gonna be that. I never thought this team was playoff bound this year. I caught some heat on my other podcast, right? Because I picked them to finish third in the division.
Yep.
And yeah, and was telling I've warned people for months, like, hey, this isn't probably gonna look pretty early on. It's just not. And so I've been prepared for this. So to me, crank it up. Let him get the reps. Let him get the throws. Keep exposing him to this type of play. And eventually, whether it be a year from now or 2 years from now, once he's able to go, like if he's 24, 25 years old and he's been exposed to like Justin Fields, if he's going into his 65th game in the NFL and he's seen all these different looks and he knows all these different coverages and he works at his craft, which he does, right? We know that. We know how hard of a worker he is. He works at his craft and he that base gets better and his hip rotation gets better and he's not trying to arm it. All these just little things that he learns as he plays the game and gets exposed to this stuff more. You're, you're ready. You're ready. You're ready to take off. Like you're not just competing for the playoffs at that point, right? You're competing for Super Bowls. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. That's where we want to get to. So, yeah, crank it up. If we lose this week, you think I'm going to be heartbroken? No, not going to be heartbroken in the least. So I mean, is it going to be disappointing? Yeah. I mean, it's always disappointing when you lose. I mean, you don't ever want to lose, right? But
It's gonna be a long
uh,
week.
yeah, yeah, dude, it freaking sucks to lose. It freaking sucks. And like I said, you don't ever want to be 1-3 and you're having to climb yourself out of a hole and all this. So preferably, like I said, Richardson looks a little bit better. Really, if he can look like how he looked early on last year, right? Um, I think that's where you kind of want to be right now. If you can just get to the point to where he looked early on last year and where you've seen the Rams game or early on, like even the Houston game, if you can put on tape what you put on tape in Houston, I think you're doing okay.
Hey, I agree, man.
It's my
It's only a
soapbox.
matter of time. You guys just got to be patient, man. Before we get up out of here, Anthony Gold, if you hear me listening, we love your game. We love what you're doing so far, but just try to get in the end zone this week. You got close the last few times, but this week, just try to get in the end zone. Like we love how you putting us in good field
Really,
position.
if you're in a position like you were last week, try to get out of the end zone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right, right.
yeah,
We need six out of. We need six this week though. We need six. I think it's time. He's been putting some moves on back there, so he definitely gets his credit, man. He's a good special teams player. We of course we knew that coming out of the draft. So
yeah. Just stay in the end zone this
yes,
time. Don't come out of the end. Just stay in the end zone and take the touchback.
yeah, man. But we're gonna see the Colts versus Steelers. We're gonna see how this outcome, and we'll be back to give you our thoughts and reactions to the game. But we appreciate you guys for tuning in. This is Landon. This is Culture Shock. Best of luck, Colts. It's going to be a dogfight. And until next time, we will